Good afternoon. Welcome to today's end-of-week press conference featuring representatives from the defense and the prosecution of Hadi al-Iraqi. Our ground rules are as follows. This conference is being fed live to Fort Meade. We're at our closed-circuit TV site. We have two journalists, Wells Bennett from Lawfare Blog and Tom Ramstack representing Reuters. All questions are on the record. Journalists, please state your name and affiliation before asking your question. I ask that all participants incorporate the question into their response for the benefit of those at outlying stations who did not hear the question. And we'll start with the defense, who has 20 minutes. Lieutenant Colonel Jasper from the defense.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Jasper. I'm the lead defense counsel for Hadi al-Iraqi. I do not have any prepared statements regarding these motions in the last few days, but I am here to answer any questions that the media may have.
Carol Rosenberg with the Miami Herald. In reading the response to the interim order by the prosecution, it left the impression that perhaps they aren't complying with it because they question which is the status quo. Is it your sense that they've actually complied with the interim order with regards to your client?
The question from Mrs. Rosenberg from Miami Herald is whether the defense believes that the government and its answers are contending that they are complying with the interim order, which is to not have female guards physically have contact with Mr. Hadi al-Iraqi to and from meetings with defense counsel and also to the court sessions. And our sense, ma'am, is that the order is currently being complied with. I've had several independent meetings with Mr. Hadi al-Iraqi last week in preparation of the court hearings the last few days, and our sense is that there are no females having any contact with him currently, and we had no issues with it this particular week. So we sense there haven't been any issues whatsoever in the issues being complied with. Additionally, with my interview with Colonel Heath on Friday morning, he indicated that he understood the interim order and also that it's being complied with. I hope that answers the question.
It was suggested in court that what they've done in order to comply with it is withdrawn all females from the guard force that handles Hadi al-Iraqi at court and at the place where you meet him. So I was confused by why the first lieutenant OIC in the back of the room is a female.
The question is, why is there a lieutenant in back of the courtroom from the U.S. Navy who happened to be a female, and whether she's part of the guard force or not? I happen to know she's a staff judge advocate, not part of the guard force. And from the very beginning in this case, the only thing our client is objecting to is actually physical touching, not the presence of females of the guard force being nearby, ordering him around, directing him, supervising, things of that nature. It's just the physical contact itself. So we have no objection to females being nearby in the courtroom. We saw them the very first day, and as well as today, and again, have no objection to that particular issue, them being present. It's just strictly his religious conviction that he's trying to comply with and feels deeply about.
How do you see this emergency motion affecting future cases?
That's a great question, and I really don't know how it's going to impact the other cases subject to this commission. We realize there are other detainees here at these camps, and frankly, we've been so busy on working with our case and our client's issue that I have not conversed with other defense members from other teams to figure out how it may or may not impact their particular cases. So I really can't answer the question directly or the impact it may have, because as you can probably imagine, the judge is just dealing with our particular case, and every case is unique. And our case is not one of the 9/11 cases. It's not affiliated with that. Separate charges, separate defense strategy, and we really don't know the impact it's going to have on those particular cases. Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
Meryl Terezzo, U.S. News. I was just wondering, now that you have more time, how many witnesses are you hoping to speak with?
I'm estimating right now that we've counted between 9 and 12 witnesses that we'd like to confer with.
And do you think they'll all be helpful?
Yes. You know, and that's the purposes of the interview, is to determine if there's any relevance, anything that might help and assist our position. We just frankly don't know. So far, we've been given some interview statements that weren't written by those particular members. They were just subject to interviews, and they were summaries, essentially, of what transpired on our client regarding the forced cell extraction. So we do think the interviews are going to be helpful. Whether we actually call those all or some of all those witnesses will be after we assess the information we gathered through the interview. And that's why we think it's so important in this commission to call witnesses, to totally flesh this matter out in public for everybody to see. Not to be totally transparent, we agree. That's what we want. And our sense was that the government wasn't going to call any witnesses. They were going to provide one affidavit, a written affidavit. I interviewed that person who gave that affidavit. The information wasn't exactly the same. So we feel like the interview is going to be extremely constructive and helpful to the defense, and it's our job. We understand this is a serious case, serious charges. It's our job to represent them zealously, and that's what I intend to do with my team. And I would say I'm being incompetent if I don't interview these witnesses. That's why we were so adamant today, and that's why we laid out the timing, and we thought the judge agreed with us that we deserve more time to prepare, to give him a competent defense, which he rates under the rules.
If Mr. Hadi testifies, is it about his faith or his FCE or both? And would that be an open court?
Ma'am, the question asked from Mrs. Rosenberg is if our client elects to testify, whether it would be regarding his faith, whether it would be about a forced cell extraction, or whether it would be about some other issue,
Both.
or both together, and whether that would be an open court, meaning in an unclassified setting. The answer to that question is I'm not going to provide that right now, ma'am. We're still, as I said, the main position from the defense is we can't assess properly whether he should testify until we've conducted our due diligence by interviewing witnesses to determine whether it's going to benefit him. But if he does choose to testify, it probably, we're not sure yet, but we believe it would probably be in a classified setting at this point. Classified.
Like a 505.
A 505 matter, a 505G, yes, ma'am.
Do you know of any other defense attorneys for detainees in Guantanamo Bay in the past who've had this sort of issue with access? Or is this just a completely new, out of the blue misunderstanding?
I'm Mr. Hadi al-Iraqi's third lead defense counsel. I was detailed to the case in August, officially put on the case in late September. So I'm not aware of, and I've been fully focused and concentrated on Hadi's case only. I haven't had the time to go watch the other motion hearings. My instincts are that this matter is coming to fruition now because it's our sense that the policy has changed here with where Mr. Hadi al-Iraqi is detained, and there has been a change in course of operations. That's our contention, and that this is a new issue, and we may be the first ones addressing it. That's my sense.
How has the policy changed?
Well, we think it's going to come out. Our client had not been had any physical contact with female guards from the years from 2006 to 2010, and then from 2010 to 2014, there weren't any female guards working until most recently, since June, when the new commander took over here, over the detention facility. So in the last 7 years, our client hasn't been touched by a physically by a female guard. And the only times that he would be touched by female guards is during the escort process and shackling and reshackling process. There's another 100 to 150 duties that guards have. This is maybe less than 1% of their duty. And we don't believe it deprives that particular guard from being effective. And we believe his deeply held religious convictions that are widely known across the world should be honored. It's that simple for us. And it's that important to our client. It's a critical issue for him.
And they're not including any female guards in the escorting whatsoever as well?
No, yeah, and I want to be clear, it's not that they can't participate in the escort process, it's simply just not having physical contact with Mr. al-Hadi al-Iraqi, unless there were some emergency, for instance, a medical issue arose, something along those lines. And we believe this deeply held religious conviction is widely recognized across the Muslim world. It's in Shia law. It's not something that Hadi al-Iraqi is originating or coming up with on his own or trying to be difficult. He's trying to be compliant with his religion. Yes, ma'am.
And I know that we had to stop so that we'd be done in time for his prayer. What other religious things, I guess, does he do to observe his religion while he's here?
Well, there's certain foods that he eats. He fasts. He prays 5 times a day. Those are the main things while he's here that he practices. I know he's a study of his, he's a student of his religion. He has a Quran with him at all times. He's praying constantly. He's devout. He's a devout Muslim. That's the extent of my understanding in the last few months of working with him.
Do you think that the detention center is going to be accommodating to his requests?
The question is whether the detention facility has been accommodating to his request. It seems they've been accommodating on many things, yes. And there's some things not so much, but I'm not prepared to, at this point, to address which ones or how prevalent or pervasive those issues may be. And that may come out later at the next motion hearing. Yes, ma'am.
The PRO covers movements to the court and movements to meetings with you. In your main motion, are you asking for this only in that concept or for all of his contacts with guards?
Our preference is all contacts.
Are you asking the judge to issue that order?
That is an order that we want the judge that we will be seeking in January. Currently, the interim order doesn't cover that, but yes, ma'am.
And what would be his, I don't know. I mean, he made it clear today that what he's interested in is the functioning of getting him to the court and getting him to you. What would be the legal argument for it to extend to other things, for example, transfers to optometrist visits or something like that?
Yeah. I'm going to reserve my answer until January on that particular issue to fully flesh that out, but it's the same principle. He cannot have physical contact with females outside of his immediate family, period, unless it's for some urgent issue, a medical issue, or some emergency.
Do you believe it's your obligation to seek that for all of his time in the detention center and that the judge has the ability to order that for all of his time? Or you would seek
The judge has to make a determination whether he has jurisdiction outside of what he can force the detention center to comply with. For instance, his right to a counsel or his right to appear in court. So the judge hasn't made a determination whether it's in his purview to make a more expansive order. That's something I think we're going to be litigating in January. And the judge in his interim order did not address that.
Do you have any intention of calling some sort of Islamic authority to testify for him?
Our intention is to show by preponderance of evidence that this is a deeply held religious conviction by Hadi al-Iraqi, and we think we can carry that burden.
Going back to my first question, or you ever worried that this first case regarding female guards is going to impact future cases, and that it might be a slippery slope, and that female guards might see less and less work that they could be doing in the detention facilities?
You know, frankly, I represent Mr. al-Hadi al-Iraqi. That's not our concern, how it impacts female guards. Our contention is that it should not impact, based on what I've learned through their SOPs about the scope and magnitude of other duties. Like I said, there are a multitude of duties that don't involve physical contact, and a very small percentage do. Really, it's just the escort process. So we don't believe it should impact female guards going forward. And you know, our argument is as well is that we would hope that a U.S. soldier or U.S. Marine or airman or sailor, if the situation were reversed and they were held captive in a different country, they could practice their religion and it would be honored. Especially something as critically important as this issue and widely recognized across the Muslim world.
What's been the most frustrating part of this case for you?
In the limited time I've been on this case, the most frustrating part is constantly hearing how transparent this process should be. And my understanding and experience in court martials under UCMJ of how we're supposed to present evidence on both sides to make a persuasive point, and yet we're doing motions now that call for witnesses. The government could have easily called all these witnesses to prove their point, but want to make it a paper case. And they can use the rules to their advantage, like hearsay is admissible, or just affidavits, and not call people to the stand under oath like we would in any other military court or U.S. district court anywhere else in America. And it kind of makes us feel like we need to call the witnesses. And that's simply what we were aiming to do, and asking for the ability to do so. And it hasn't been easy because of the secured environment we're in. We don't have the names of these witnesses. We know their positions, but we're not authorized to call them and interview them to determine whether they're relevant and whether they can testify. So it's, for all those reasons, that's been very frustrating. It's a different system than I'm used to. And it doesn't seem transparent. I keep hearing how transparent this is, this process and this commission.
One more question from the back.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, roughly how many times a month would you say that Mr. al-Hadi al-Iraqi needs to be shackled when he visits you? Or how often does that happen?
My understanding that he's shackled from his cell and escorted to where we meet with him. Then he's unshackled. Then he meets with us in the morning for a few hours. He's shackled to the floor when he's meeting with us. We have lunch. We meet in the afternoon after about an hour break, and after his prayers, we meet for another 2 or 3 hours. And at the end of the day, he's reshackled and brought back to his cell at a different location.
And how many
So
times?
twice.
In one day, but how many days typically do you meet with him?
Okay. We try to get down here once every 2 to 3 weeks on average. I've been here since November 8th in preparation of a hearing. I met with him several times last week. I met with him 3 or 4 times since Sunday. So I've had ample time to meet with him. We will be down here at least once every 3 weeks. And because of the logistical challenges, the flights, if there's certain hearings going on, there may not be room for us to come down, but we are trying to have as much contact as possible to develop a rapport, to get an understanding, develop a strategy, discuss the issues with him, let him know that he has a zealous defense team. So every month we're here, and so far it's been, I'd say on average, every 2 to 3 weeks.
Any final comments?
Nope, I appreciate very good questions. I hope I answered them all completely, and look forward to the next conference at the conclusion of the next hearing in January. Thank you.